Good morning, everyone. Great to see you all in here. So we're just waiting for everyone to come in and we'll begin shortly. So, good morning, everyone. We are extremely happy, extremely glad to be here with all of you and to be able to present to all of you what will be the next steps after class 100. And to do that, my father will be guiding a small lecture on what will come up next. And after that, we'll enter a Q&A. If you guys have any questions throughout the whole lecture or Q&A, please send them directly on Zoom chat. And those questions will come to me. We'll be sorting out the questions and we'll call the people to speak after the questions are selected. Please, guys, keep your audio muted throughout the whole lecture and Q&A. And if you have any questions or anything, please send them to me through the Zoom chat. And if you are on the online school, you can send them directly on the live chat at the online school as well. So thank you so much, guys. Hope you enjoy. And with you now, Dad.
Hi, good morning. So thank you very much for being here again and for being with me throughout all these classes. A few things have been happening. First of all, on average, everybody's practicing a lot more, but not only that, most of you are practicing a lot better. And in the States or Europe, none of you have been able to have regular classes with me. It was only training, teacher trainings and events and retreats, but never actually classes. And I think we have to have events and trainings, that's for sure, but the magic really happens throughout the regular classes, throughout the consistency of our practices. And consistency, as you know, I think it's everything in this process. So practicing more and practicing with more quality made me to choose to customize the pressure very specifically. This process is very much like homeopathy, for example. You diminish it gets more powerful as you dissolve more, let's say. So you don't have to use lots of practice and lots of pressure if you're practicing with consistency. You can be very subtle and you can be very gentle and the results will be naturally piling up, okay? Also, most of you have never been able to experience the 100 in the proper order. It's just life. Life gets in the way. And now you're experiencing these classes in a very specific fashion with lots of results. Results are coming from everywhere, from Brazil, from the States, from Europe, from people who have never seen me before, from people who haven't practiced before. The only thing that really makes a difference is you being able to listen. And just because you're listening, everything changes, but mainly our brain changes. When we listen, when we are truly listening, our inner talk just decreases dramatically. So that is a key component. I was finishing the live here in Brazil a few minutes ago, and this woman was asking about what should I do? I can't clasp hands. Should I find a segue? How should I customize? And you know, in some classes I say, move through, push through. In some classes I say, if you have that, don't even touch the area. In some classes, I say, be super gentle. And in some classes, I'm absolutely vague with the words I choose in order for you to be always in this listening mode. So don't go for rules, just be listening. If you start practicing with an agenda, that is never going to work. If you start practicing saying to yourself, I can do more, I will do more. So if you do have something you intend to be doing before listening and before experiencing the class, then you are no longer taking my class. You are doing your own class, and that will give you just the results you might gain from your level of comprehension. And what I'm asking is an absolutely different thing. I don't care if David can, yes, I'm seeing you, or Sarah or Charlie, if you guys can have your hands clasped. In some of the classes, that's not what we are doing. So if you just change the logics, you are no longer keeping your mind open to the results I'm offering. And you will just have results from your comprehension. I hope that makes sense. So I don't want you to be so connected with your bodies. It's the body that will be used in a very intelligent way to create a tremendous impact in your mind. And if you just see your body and feel the body and use the body, forgetting that the body is not what we are really targeting on, that's never going to happen. So you've seen, in you guys in the States, you've seen thousands of yoga teachers finishing their careers, being super nervous, being anxious, having nervous system issues, or with bodies that are at that time becoming a wreck. That is not what I'd like you to experience through the practice or in life. But in order to have that, you have to stop trying to control everything, and you have to stop practicing from the same level of understanding you always do. That is the best way for you to minimize the results, not to maximize the results. When you assume that you can always... essa tela que fica mudando para mim aqui, eu preciso que pare. When you have to stop trying to control, and you have to start listening. I'm not teaching you in the platform in a way that is different from the way I practice. And this is one of the things you have to understand. So if you keep thinking that this hip and that shoulder and this foot are everything, and that you have to be always approaching those areas, you will never be approaching yoga. You will always be approaching your foot and your hip and your back and your shoulder only. And that is not going to create a healing process in your brain. And therefore, your results will be dramatically dropping. So in order for you to have everything I'd like you to have, you have to listen more and better, okay? It's not only about taking classes. It's about taking classes, minimizing the amount of energy you expend, and maximizing the results you have. And you cannot only expect results that you understand. You have to open up to results that are unimaginable. Otherwise, you just deprive me from delivering what I'd like you to be receiving. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So we are coming to the end of one cycle. And at this moment, I need to integrate a few extra pieces of understanding in all of you. I'd like you to, this is why, because I've been noticing the amount of practice and I've been tracing a few tiny mistakes you're making. I'd like you to be with me for this morning. So we're practicing a lot more, but that doesn't mean you are practicing a lot better. Generally speaking, you are. Generally speaking, all of you are practicing a lot more and a lot better. And then I could present the work with this level of lightness. That is what I prefer the most, and I think it's best. Lots of you are practicing every day, if not more than once a day, which is also amazing. But if you are not practicing this much, I'd like you not to be super hard on yourselves as well, because that's not going to be helpful. So all of you are at least doing a few things, and just doing a few things is already fantastic. Like, if you don't practice every day, just have your legs up. Maybe one Sukhasana, maybe one tiny thing here and there, but don't go inside of your head criticizing yourselves, because that's totally unnecessary, okay? That's one thing that I think is very important to remember. As we finish with class number 100, and the teachers understand that, but now I'd like mainly all of you to understand that the numbers are not sequential numbers. Those numbers are just for studios and teachers to organize their plans. For the students, the numbers, they don't matter at all, okay? They are cycles, so it doesn't matter if you're starting in class 30, 44, 45, then you just go sequential from there. But don't pay too much attention to the numbers, okay? I am opening a few different categories in the platform. Categories that you will be choosing. And during the next 3 weeks, you will be practicing only the classes exactly in the order I'm suggesting in the platform, okay? So the categories are the following: excessive flexibility, excessive rigidity. Some of you just feel that you are super rigid. Some of you know and feel that you are super flexible. And it doesn't really matter what my opinion is. I want you to choose one of these options accordingly to how you feel about yourselves, okay? The next category is modern living. So people who work a lot sitting or standing, or don't have specific issues, or just arriving to this, getting to this work right now. So you just join the modern living. Upper body, lower body, and general back issues, general. So everything is very generic. As you know, none of these things will be specific for this pain and that pain. This is not how my brain works. There is an emphasis in a certain area. And the main purpose of these categories is to help you from the understanding that there is a certain specificity to open up, to listen over and over again. So everything is about education. It's about us choosing to educate ourselves in a new language, in a new way of doing yoga. And these categories are very important because you will be listening, learning, and practicing again. I'd like you to practice only in the order that I am suggesting, only. And if you decide to practice 2 classes a day, you do the first class of that specific sequence in the morning, and then if you practice one after the other, you just do that right after or by the end of the day, but you go sequential. And if you get to the end of that sequence, let's say In our past workshop at Tibet House, I was talking to David, and David, if I'm not wrong, had a shoulder situation and all that. So David can start with upper body, which is mainly shoulder, hands, shoulder girdle, and neck, okay? And that will be very helpful. Or David can rethink and reconsider his priorities and choose general back issues, just because he mentioned also a few benefits from the sequences that he was not really expecting. Or David can choose, okay, I'm going just for super rigid people. Okay, so you can choose, but you gotta stick to the plan, because these sequences were chosen to help you to integrate this information. And I need that process of integration to be happening over the next 3 weeks. Because at the end, we will have a few more sequences, and then probably in 6 weeks from now, we will start with a totally new set of sequences that will be highly customized. It's a set of sequences that I could not work consistently over the past decade. Studios grew too much, too many students, not enough space for hundreds of chairs and all that. So you will be able to see next what was the very basic origin of the method in a way that I was never able to teach in events and trainings. So the results will be a lot more impactful, a lot more tangible. Your understanding, your process of learning will be very, very much upgraded, let's say. And the sense of control and the safety will be tremendous at the same time. So I just want you to be ready for that. For the moment when I will move you all away from the floor to start a totally different thing in a totally different way, okay? So you guys are practicing a lot more. I think most of you are practicing a lot better. A few of you are still attached to an old way of doing things. And that is something I'm planning to change and fix in the next few weeks. Sequences, categories will be flexibility, rigidity, modern way of living, upper body, lower body, general back issues, okay? Don't seek for a formula. And if you are teachers, don't write those numbers to use with students, because the idea is totally different. It's about you being students, it's about understanding, learning, changing, progression, okay? And after that, we will be revisiting the first sequences from 1 to 30 something, and then I will start this new cycle. That will be completely different, absolutely customized, and I would say very unique, okay? Now we will open for questions that are mainly about the platform, the process, customizations, whatever you might need from me directly as students who are experiencing this process, okay? So what do we have?
Hey guys, so the first question is from Jen Munson. So Jen, if you could open your microphone and camera and ask us directly the question, that would be great.
So my question, you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So my question is that if we choose a category, say lower body for the next 3 weeks, but then I want to do the upper body one after that, will that still be available like in the on demand?
Yeah,
So
this is, Yeah, so this is how our brain tends to work. And I'd like you just not to do that. It's a moment. These categories will remain there, but once we finish, I'd like you to be with me in the class of the day.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so okay, but I've lost 5 classes. So just forget them and be with me in that day. I know for you guys, mainly those of you who teach, there is a need for education and analysis and research, but then why don't you just sit, watch, and study? Okay, don't mix.
I need more hours in the day, Francisco.
Yes. Now
so
we have
that I
so
can
many.
Sit and watch and study. I need more hours.
Because but that's very important. Then you can just practice one day and study the next day, because we want to have it all together. And there is a conflict of focus, because your brain will not be really practicing or really studying. And we like to assume that is the best option, but in my experience, it's not as good as being precise, okay? So for now, use the one that you think is the one you prefer, and then they will be there for you to analyze and study in the future. Although, as a student of mine, I would prefer you to be with me in the class of the day. Even if you just set your sails for 3 classes a week, which is fine, perfect. We've been practicing with a level of quality that will deliver a lot with 3 classes a week. But what I need once we move forward with the process is that you guys sit and take the class. Take the practice, be with me, listen only, without having in the back part of the brain analysis, questions, notes being taken. Now we have the opportunity to practice with such a high level of quality that I need you to engage with even more quality, because there is a potential for that. So then we don't mix messages. You're with me, even if it's just 1 class a week, but at that moment, we have this moment of perfection, just listening and just allowing the process to take you. Otherwise, we keep controlling everything and impoverishing the results. And this is what I'd like you not to do. Does that make sense?
Does to me. Thank you. So hard to choose, though. I'm like, I don't know whether I want to do upper body or lower body. It's like 50-50.
Many of you will have that sensation, okay? For all those of you who don't really know or don't know what to choose, I'd like you to go for the modern way of living.
Thank you.
Okay, that is the one we'll be streaming with the teachers available all the time. So the modern way of living is what we are streaming, the proper sequence starting right after 100. So doubts, too many options, I don't know how to do it, you go for that one. Okay, although from the people I'm seeing here, Valerie, Martha Esposat, and Sarah, you guys go for extra flexibility, okay? Don't give me that look, Martha.
We have another question that came through another channel, so the person is not on Zoom, but the question is very related to what we're talking, is what is the ideal frequency of practicing these sequences? What is the ideal separation between the practices and the classes, and how to structure around that?
First of all, I want to say that I'm not going to give you any tips, Stephen. It's just for Sarah. Okay? Don't even stick your head into the camera now. So first we differentiate. Studying is studying, practicing is practicing. Now that we have this opportunity, very important to clarify, okay? So, okay, but I want to take this class and that class and this class with you, and then I'll join those classes outside as well. Guys, if you want to support other teachers, you can do that. You don't have to take the class. I'm sorry. If you are mixing the messages, how could you possibly have all the results that might be available? If you are mixing neurological messages, biomechanical messages, all the messages are mixed, it's not going to work. You are controlling and impoverishing and diminishing a lot the potential for results. That's one, okay? Okay, but I always do the alphabet. That's great, but you haven't been able to take classes with me daily, and now we do have this opportunity. So stop and stick to the plan. How often is very important. Why are you practicing? Do you feel like getting to the mat? Are you really categorizing the physical practice as hygiene? Or are you still seeing just physical activity? Do you feel like going to the mat very often? Great, then you go. But is this the body calling or you imposing? Very different things. So you feel like going, but then you find out that your body is super sensitive from the day before. Just allow that practice not to happen. Work on a great opening, maybe sit in the first Sukhasana, find out that your hips are going crazy, and accept that only one Sukhasana as your practice for the day. Do not impose out of rigidity. This is something that all of you have to learn. But the more rigid we are, the more difficulties we have with that. And you have to learn how to give the proper value to the small things. Maybe you can accomplish more with the first pose of a sequence than you would be doing with the whole sequence. So acknowledge the value of the things you do and do not impose out of rigidity. Remember, it's yoga. It's an art of flexibility with structure. It's an art of extreme flexibility with lots of structure. Don't do anything out of rigidity. It's never going to work. Okay? We are having now, as a community, the opportunity to expose ourselves to a level of result, to a level of unique results that we've never had. You've seen yoga teachers getting old with lots of issues, and we can't make those mistakes again. We know better. So it's about this edge of perfection. Perfection not as a rule, but as a direction. And we will be imperfect daily as we move towards this goal of having a body that is absolutely functional, but that doesn't, it's so functional that doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is the fact that we are using the body to create such an amazing impact in our mind. If you're practicing studying, you are not in meditation mode. If you're practicing and analyzing, you are not on meditation mode. If you're practicing and taking notes for your next class, you're not in meditation mode. And then you might think this method is great, but you are not scratching the surface of it. Okay, so how often to practice? How often do you feel like practicing without imposing a rigid structure? That is my question for you. And as you know, I will never give you just a tiny, simple recipe. It doesn't work. It's about the development of the whole system, the system being body, brain, mind, everything together. What's next?
So next we have a question from Angela. Angela, can you turn on your camera mic and ask us the question?
On and unmuted. Can you see and hear me?
I can hear.
Okay. Hey, Francisco. How are you? Question. Concerning the spine. So post surgery of fusion, cervical, lumbar, 6 months out. What kind of recommendations do you make with starting up a practice again? And like where to begin and how slow or not slow to go, and what modifications do you think? I know I'm hitting two areas, lumbar and cervical. It might be different, but just, yeah, those questions.
I've been working, Angela, in the platform with that. So when I am teaching exactly as I taught you to teach. Before teaching, you have to have your imaginary room with you. And this is exactly what I do. So as I envision myself teaching, I have in my imaginary room many of you that I know, and also people that I don't know. And in the mix, I add lots of complexity. So I am teaching in a way that I believe would suit properly all those complex situations, like post-surgery, post-accidents and all that. Because basically, you want to do the same. Just as we've done together, me and you back in Toronto. It's reintroducing a movement to a highly sensitive area requires 100% safety. So how? As soon as possible. When? As soon as possible. How? As safe as possible, and beyond that, because it's more important to reintroduce whatever is doable to reintroduce to that area in a way that does not create any bad memories.
Huh. Right.
Okay, so it's a lot more important not to take any risks or chances for as long as necessary. And then eventually, if you do it right, the student should be firing the question. I believe I can do a little more. It's a spark that has to come from them. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. I guess you're saying as soon as possible. So after surgery, as soon as possible. So if there's, I guess my concern is with not torquing, but not twisting, but turning the body, upper body, let's say in Sukhasana with a twerk.
What is the very beginning of a movement?
What is the very beginning of a movement?
In that specific regard that you've just mentioned.
First, it's sitting in Sukhasana. It's sitting.
But your concern is dropping and moving to the right or to the left, or dropping straight to the right. Where is the very beginning of that?
Of that, the moving to the left or the right, it's just moving slightly forward. It's starting to.
No, it begins with their eyes.
Oh, shit. Right. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Visual vestibular. Yeah. Got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So intention. So just, yeah.
No intention. Have no intention involved. Because if there is intention, they lose the moment. They are guided, they see, and they stay in the moment.
Okay. Yeah, the eyes. Okay.
So guys, it's very important to acknowledge the meditative component in this process. We are having the opportunity to practice yoga as yoga was practiced thousands of years ago in a cave. We cannot lose the connection between this moment and the most fundamental seed of yoga itself. Okay? So be in the moment. Don't talk about the moment. Don't think about the moment, but really acknowledge the value of the moment. And remember, it's the body moving the mind, educating the mind, and creating a state of presence. So 100% safety, feeling, and allowing. Thinking, controlling, analyzing, thinking about, or turning the practice into a physical activity, it's never going to work, okay? Next.
So we have a question that came on another channel as well, and it is, in my case, I am
Meu áudio está cortando.
excessive flexible, but I have a lot of hip rigidity. What is your suggestion? Are you hearing me?
No, I'm not hearing you at all. Your audio is cutting.
Are you hearing me?
Nope.
Vai? Tá me ouvindo?
O seu áudio está cortando. Eu não te ouço, eu não entendi a pergunta.
Entendi. The question was, in my case, I am excessive flexible, but I have a lot of hip rigidity. What is your suggestion when two major areas are calling for attention?
So, he's just said, in my case, I'm super flexible, but I have lots of hip rigidity. Guys, there's no such a thing as a super flexible body that is not going to be paying the price one day. Okay? This is why I'm making so many comments on flexibility as I teach. And I would love you all with more flexible bodies to understand that you have to get your priorities right. Shapes, poses, in shallow sensations, obvious sensations, will never deliver any results to you. Okay? So it's not two situations. The excessive flexibility is always the priority. So you go for the excessive flexibility sequence, stick to that one, practice understanding that I'm not planning to change your body in 3 weeks, but I'm planning to imprint new memories and a totally new understanding in your system. It's not only the body, not only intellectual information, it's everything. It's a package, and it has to happen at once. So stay right there. And all of you feel like doing a little extra at the end, just don't. Just understand that that little extra you tend to do is exactly when you lose the potential results. You totally go back to the starting point. It's not easy. It's challenging. I understand. Everything in you will be willing to do that extra. Just don't. It's going to pay off. It just takes time, and it is physically, mentally, and emotionally super challenging. I totally understand that. But it works. Next one.
Next question. Hearing, okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Next question is from Wendy. So Wendy, if you could turn on your mic and camera and ask us the question, that would be great. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Wendy, by the way, I didn't respond to your question for one reason, the email you sent me, and you think that's very funny. But I did not understand the English. I needed to ask Javi to help me.
Oh,
So,
well,
and we are together today, so he will help me. But go on.
okay. Well, this is a different question, but if you need me to clarify the other one, I can. But my question is actually kind of a different one from the one I asked you previously. I wondered if you, and you started to talk about this already, if you could say more about the impact of practice on the mind, beyond promoting a state of relaxation, of course, leading to a state of presence, but how does that really, talk more about why is that something to aspire to? How does that inform one's life? How does that really transform the way of living?
I think it does. I was driving to come here yesterday, and and eventually, as I drove, you've been in that road from São Paulo to Curitiba. It was super nice. It was very nice to be on the road. It was very, everything was clean and clear. I've noticed, and it was exactly what happened yesterday. I've noticed when I was driving that my last thought happened maybe 15 minutes before. And then it happened again, and it's something that sometimes catches my attention in life, because the practice have been delivering to me this ability not to think all the time, not to think unless that there is a intention, the intention of analyzing, reflecting, or thinking about something. Unless that there is that, which I feel that accumulates a tremendous amount of energy, then you use it. And it sounds very efficient, not to mention the fact that it's super calming. It's like the value of meditation is unquestionable. But for me, I have the sense that there is a chance for you to have life going in meditation mode. And apparently, we have access to a level of mind and intelligence that we don't often have when our patterns and personalities and habits are always creating some sort of noise inside. So this is the value for me. And I think as a method, I think we're we are getting to something quite special in that regard. This place that aligns the body and the brain in a way that creates this wave through the mind. Could you please shoot that other question as well?
Yeah, the other question, very, very different. Thank you for what you just shared. When you've given the instructions, I've heard you say when the leg is extended in the air, say for example on our back or legs up the wall, to move the hip without moving the pelvis. And so I don't know if it's the same in Portuguese, but the hip has the capsule, which is part of the pelvis, and it has the head of the femur bone. And it seems to me the part that you want to move independently is the head of the femur bone, but I don't really see how it's possible to move the hip without moving the pelvis, because the hip is part of the pelvis.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a semantic thing.
Yeah, it's a semantic thing, and it's different in Portuguese for sure. But I don't like the idea of talking about sacrum. So I prefer to be generic. And let's say, when I say that, I'm talking about the back part of the pelvis. Maybe adding that piece of information would be more helpful.
Yeah, it's only because it's confusing to students. To me as a student, I'll just say that.
Yeah, so let's keep the back of the pelvis on the floor.
Yeah.
And move the hip joint independently. Because when we say sacrum or tailbone, when we go more specific, then it's a major confusion. So I prefer to be just generic, mentioning the back part of the pelvis, and then creating this independent movement of the hip joint. Okay, because that also leads them to create the movement in a way that engages the structures differently. Now, with lots of people from the yoga field from before, they tend to come with lots of intellectual baggage and intellectual pieces of information, and they've been taught to control the way things happen. Meaning, this muscle, that muscle, do this without doing that. And that is something that turned out as a major mistake in the long run. So, back of the pelvis, but you're right, you're absolutely right. I'm asking for something that is virtually impossible. The intention is kind of like that.
Okay, for myself, and help me to understand if I've been thinking about this incorrectly, I am trying to create space inside the hip joint.
Yes, you are.
And so for me, I'm trying to move my leg and keep everything else the same.
Although internal stuff will move, core structures will be triggered. And when we try to control how that happens, we end up impoverishing the power of the moment, because what happens inside might be different every day, depending on what you did yesterday, depending on organs, movements, periods, and so many different things. This is why it's so important not to be analyzing at the moment. Afterwards, you can, that's for sure. But at the moment, the being on the moment, in the moment, is everything, and what you said is just words. But at the moment, trying to make that without thinking, which is the fine line here.
Okay, I don't want to take too much time on it, but the only time that I can create any kind of space is if I think about moving the leg, not the hip. If I just say move the hip, everything moves. And
exactly. And that's great that you were saying, because that is something that I'd like you to be able to feel since the very beginning. And very often when I'm saying those lines, I'm saying them to you. What's next, Javi?
So the next question is from David. So David Margolis, if you can turn on your mic and camera and ask my father the question directly, that would be great.
Okay, hi Francisco.
Hi, David.
Could you clarify whether these 3-week concentrations you're doing are in addition to the online daily classes?
The online, yes. So I will be broadcasting daily the modern living. Okay? Classes to educate and to suit absolutely everyone that is alive. Okay? So you can do just that. If you choose the modern living, that is what you should be doing. Okay? Or you go for one of the other categories. It's in addition. Okay? Modern living is the daily class that's going to be broadcasted exactly in the order that is going to be presented. And the other categories will not be broadcasted daily, but will be available.
So the ones we pick, we can do in addition to the online daily classes, what you're saying?
No, you do just one.
Do one. Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned my shoulder versus my pelvis, and it's an interesting question because the shoulder is kind of in a recent problem, and it's limited. I do what I can, but the movements are limited. My hips have been tight for my whole life, and so they've been. In one case, I'm not sure how much 3 weeks is going to affect the shoulder. Ongoing will, but I'd like to keep working with the hips because it's having an effect, and I'm not sure whether these 3 weeks are to ingrain in me a whole learning about that one part in terms of how I approach it and how I listen. And it's like a 3-week, your Francisco's
brainwashing,
downloading onto me of, so I have no way to choose between those two, really.
So modern living.
Okay.
Okay, is exactly, so guys, many of you will feel that you can't choose, but that is when you just go for the modern living, because that is exactly that. It's a package of everything. It's about education, and it's 3 weeks just to ingrain my point in terms of how to practice. That's the goal. And very curious, because as you all have noticed, he's had very limited motion, and now the arm is going all the way up. So it's not as limited anymore, but our perception at first tends to be even worse. So as you start practicing, things change, awareness increases. So sometimes it does feel better, worse, because you feel a lot more, but you feel worse as we as teachers see the range of motion increasing and increasing and increasing. And that is absolutely fantastic. But I would say probably hips are more important for you. This is why the modern living will suit better, because there is a mix of everything everywhere.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one more question. So Eric, if you can turn on your mic and camera and ask us our last question, that would be great. Eric?
I'm sorry, I had to unmute. So I have had an old injury with my back and hip, and a lot of the poses, I can't remember the Sanskrit word, but supine pose with the feet together on the legs, knees apart. I have a pinch in my hip flexors. It's very uncomfortable. I'm not sure how to modify that particular pose.
In some of the classes, my suggestion, because there is a period in the sequences where we use that pose a lot. And sometimes it's just passive, which tends to be the most delicate version. Being passive in that position tends to be very, very delicate when you have a piece of story. So when it's passive, you can just support with more pillows to hold them without triggering that at all. When it's more active, like feet pressing and arches separating, then you have to hold your knees up actively, also not triggering that particular pain. But that particular pain should never be touched in class. And it's hard because even if I say that, we tend to just revisit to see what's going on. And it's a frustrating process. So I would say, try to practice mindfully, establishing a little plan. So I will not touch the sensation for the next 6 months at all. And then you gradually relearn how to visit the pose without connecting the pose in that particular sensation too much. Because connecting them too much will create an emotional loop that rarely will help you to dissipate the sensation.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Is there any, I know that my hips are off structurally. Is there any way that even if you're doing the poses in a very careful way that doesn't trigger pain, that you could potentially be aggravating that structure being off in the pelvis? Say things aren't quite aligned in the spine pelvis region. Is it still possible to create some type of problem with that? Like
I don't think so. I think usually that type of injury, when it stays for too long, we totally avoid that particular angle. And the avoidance is for sure a source of problems in the future. But visiting and keeping the space without increasing the pain or the memory of the pain or the emotional reaction that comes with that, because it's very unpleasant, it feels very wrong at the moment. So eventually you will be avoiding that pose. But I would say the risk you take avoiding the pose in the long run is worse. That's my sense.
Okay, thanks. That really helps a lot.
Yeah, so visiting mindfully, not triggering the pain at all. And then using the rest of the cycle to reshape everything. And many of these little things in life, joints, shoulders, hips, spine, we use so much energy to avoid, and we make such a great effort to stop feeling the pain. I don't think that is the best approach to none of us. Okay?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Guys, I think we gotta go. First of all, I think this Zoom platform is great for this type of meeting. I think it's really efficient. In terms of teaching, as you know, this was not my call, this was not my preference. But definitely seeing you all is absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really missing to be with you. I was just talking to Javi, and at this point, I should have been in the States a few times this year already. I'm missing you. Maybe
Thank
not
you, guys.
Stephen so much, but I'm missing you.
Miss you too.
We miss
Bye,
you too.
guys.
Thank you, guys. Hope you have a great day. Namaste.
Miss
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.